Well, ladies, welcome to this new series for women. It's called The Power of Our Words. Now, with all of our series on Pursue God, we encourage you to do this in small groups with other women, in mentoring relationships. We'll have a workbook that you can download. What we encourage you to do is get together, watch the video in advance, use the questions, and have a conversation. My hope is that you're going to be as challenged in this series as I have been, just thinking about the words that I speak, how they impact me, and how they impact others. So let's get started. Today, we're going to focus on complaining. How do we stop complaining? I don't know about you, but that is something that is pretty common in my life. So we're going to unpack that a little bit today. We're going to see what the Bible has to say about it. So let's start with our big idea today. Here it is. Complaining puts our focus on our unmet desires rather than on God's ability to accomplish His plan. And really, ladies, isn't that the root of complaining? When I'm complaining, I'm focused on something that I don't have that I want, or something that I have that isn't quite the way I want it to be. And so I'm focusing on the negative piece of that, and I'm forgetting entirely what God's already done in my life. Now, there's a great example in the Old Testament with the Israelites that I want to unpack for just a minute today. And I want you guys to think about this, that the Israelites had been in slavery in Egypt for over 400 years. And God miraculously comes to Moses and says, listen, I'm going to give you some specific instructions. And in order to spare your firstborn sons, you need to put the blood of a pure animal over your doorpost. And tonight, the angel's going to pass through Egypt. And anyone that doesn't have blood over their doorposts, which by the way would be all the Egyptians, because they don't have this relationship with God, they didn't know this was happening, God was going to kill all the firstborn sons in Egypt. And that night, when that happened, there was weeping and wailing. Imagine that. Imagine all of the pain and suffering that happened in those Egyptian homes, that suddenly their firstborn were killed. But the Israelite children were saved. And so now Pharaoh says, get out of my country. I'm done with you. Your God is too powerful for me. Just go. We're done with you. So the Israelites are in the wilderness, leaving slavery where they had been for 400 years. And I wanted to read a couple passages to you for us to pick up on this idea of complaining. Look what it says in Exodus 14. Here are the people, the Israelites, saying, why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? So do you see how interesting and kind of sad and pathetic this is? That they had just watched God do some miraculous things, releases them, frees them from slavery. Now they're in the wilderness, moving towards the promised land, and now they're getting angry. Hey God, thanks for freeing us from slavery, but now we're wandering around out here and we don't know what we're doing. And now that Pharaoh's starting to chase us down, why did you do this to us, right? So they were kind of missing the beauty of this whole story. You're free. Israelites, you're free. God has freed you from slavery, yet the story just didn't look the way they wanted it to. They didn't like how it was going, so they started to complain. Now, later on in the story, we pick it up in Numbers. Here's what the people say. Then the foreign rabble who were traveling with the Israelites began to crave the good things of Egypt, and the people of Israel also began to complain. Oh, for some meat, they exclaimed. We remember the fish we used to eat for free in Egypt, and we had all the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic we wanted. But now our appetites are gone. All we see is this manna. Now again, it's kind of ridiculous that God has brought them through the wilderness, protecting them, leading them through, providing manna from the sky every morning. They had enough to eat. And over time, they're kind of like, I'm sick of the manna, God. I remember, back in slavery, you mean, when you used to eat that other food? So do you see how what I'm saying? Their focus was not on the things that God was doing. They were complaining about the things that they didn't have. Like they would really want food, but still be slaves. But isn't that, ladies, kind of what we do in our life of complaining? I mean, let's be honest. If I look at my life, there are so many times that I complained about something that I would be like, you know what? I'm really glad that I got this particular opportunity, but it didn't pay as well as I wanted. Or I've heard somebody else say, in fact, I have someone in my life right now that has a phenomenal opportunity in their life. They're traveling, they're doing all sorts of cool things, but the job itself that they're doing is just super boring. And so instead of looking at all the amazing things God's brought into their life through the experience, they're only focused on the negative part that they don't like. And ladies, what I want to encourage us today is this complaining, this focus on what we don't have, our unmet desires, rather than on what God's doing. that has a huge impact on the way we live, the way we see things, the way we see God, the way we treat others. And my challenge for us is going to be, let's stop narrowing our focus this way and let's start looking at things from God's perspective. And let's not wish for food from being a place of slavery, right? Let's recognize all that God's done for us and not nitpick the things that are just not quite the way we want them. So today what I want to highlight are 3 questions that I want to ask each of us. And I want you to be thinking about the things in your life that you tend to complain about. And let's start to fight against complaining in our lives. So here's the first question. What can I do to make a difference? Now here's what Proverbs 14:23 says. Work brings profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. We're going to see a lot of Proverbs through this series. But here's the first question. What can you do right now? So are you in a job that's really kind of a dead end? Or are you just not making enough money for what your life requires? Then it isn't just to sit there and complain and be like, why God? Why haven't you done this, this, or this? Say, okay, could I be getting on and looking for some new opportunities? Are there some connections that I could be making with people that might be able to help me? Are there some resumes that maybe I need to be sending out? What are some action steps I can take to move towards something and say, okay, God, I'm going to take these action steps and see if you start to open a door for me, rather than just sitting there complaining about what you don't yet have. Okay, so that's the first question. The second question is, where is my perspective wrong here? Now, this is, I think, imperative for us to really highlight. Look at Philippians chapter 2. I will rejoice even if I lose my life, pouring it out like a liquid offering to God, just like your faithful service is an offering to God. And I want all of you to share that joy. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share your joy. Ladies, for a lot of us, our perspective is just in the wrong place, right? How we started this idea that complaining is about focusing on our unmet desires. You know, every desire I have doesn't mean that's right for me. God might be saying, yeah, that desire isn't what I have for you. So we need to think about our perspective. Where am I putting my focus when I'm starting to complain? How am I starting to elevate my opinion over maybe what God's trying to do in my life, or something that he hasn't brought into my life quite yet? Maybe there's reasons for that. There's a timing to that, or maybe it's just not the right desire. Let me give you an example of a practical way that my perspective just really changed a whole experience for me that was really unfortunate. And I had a good friend that kind of called me out on it. It was years ago. I was leading a women's ministry and we were going away on this retreat. And I'm not really great in overnight situations. I don't sleep well. I'm cranky then for several days because I don't sleep well. And so I'm planning this retreat. It was up in this beautiful place in the mountains. We had great signups. I mean, everything was going very smoothly for this retreat. We had a great speaker coming in, but my focus was really singularly on, oh man, I don't want to share a bed with someone. I'm not going to sleep. And I just was being super negative and complaining. And I finally had a friend the day before the retreat who just said, you need to just stop focusing on the negative this, Tracy, and you need to look at all the great things that God is going to do in the lives of these women. And once I changed my perspective and started to focus there, I had a whole different attitude and could enjoy this retreat in a different way. So be thinking about that in your life, how our perspective makes a huge difference. Okay, here's the last question. How has God blessed me outside of this? Here's what Psalm 103:2 says. Let all that I am praise the Lord. May I never forget the good things he does for me. Ladies, this really is the key to overcoming complaining, is that we just start from a place of praising the Lord, looking at all the things he's already done, being thankful for the ways he has provided for us, he's protected us, the awesome blessings that he's brought into our lives. If we could focus on those things, man, complaining just doesn't seem to have, it doesn't come out of us the same way because our focus is in the right place. So again, I want you guys to be thinking about these 3 questions and thinking about complaining in your life and analyze for yourself. You know, are there some things that I personally could be doing, some action steps I could take to change my circumstance? Is my perspective wrong? Am I just focused on negative things or just focused on what I don't have when God's already done a ton in my life? And am I thankful for what God has already done? Now, to end each week, we're going to highlight a memory verse. And my favorite and one of my life verses is Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Here's what it says. Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. Notice what it says in there, that we're not to worry, we're to pray, we're to be thankful. So ladies, if we can get those things in play, then boy, does complaining go away, and the peace of God that exceeds all understanding can be true in our lives. So let's go on a journey. How about it together, ladies? Let's go on a journey and stop complaining.